All politics is identity politics. Hey guys, Kevin DeAnna here. Welcome to Identity Politics. My guest today needs no introduction, the legend himself, Keith Woods. Thank you so much for being here. Look, I got good news for you. According to X, Ireland's on the brink of a nationalist revolution. You're going to come home. You're going to be crowned king. This is what's happening. I mean, so don't tell me that X is misreporting the news right now. Well, because I got a lot of hopes invested in this.
I think I'm going to...
Don't do this to me, Keith.
I'm going to land and be greeted by the military junta of Conor McGregor.
Clear out all the High King Conor McGregor.
Clear out all the illegal immigrants. You know, that's the illegal immigrants that are hurting the good immigrants. Yeah.
But what's the story with these protests? What exactly is happening? Is it even about immigration?
Well, I mean, they're fueled protests. I mean, obviously I think we're going to see a lot more of this across Europe. That's one thing. But obviously the fuel prices have gone way up due to what's happening in Iran. Ireland has high fuel prices, but not actually especially so by sort of Western European standards. But yeah, small business owners, hauliers, as they're called, truckers, farmers, began these blockades. They've shut down main roads, infrastructure. It's really quite remarkable how severe the shutdown is actually in terms of the main ports that import oil, like the main hubs of energy, were actually shut down by a couple of hundred of these truckers. It kind of does, regardless of what
makes
comes
you think a little bit.
It does make you think. If truckers want to shut down the country, they really can. And it's they're talking about these strategies of how to move them. It's you fill up the road with trucks and get out and lock the door. There's really not a whole lot even the police military can do. So I think if nothing else, I think that consciousness is probably going to spread. I think we're going to see similar protests in the UK soon. Probably elsewhere in Europe, certainly the UK. But the UK is such a that's such a cauldron as well. It's ready to explode.
Oh, any second. I feel like the UK could go postal any moment.
Yeah. So it's a weird thing. I mean, on the one hand, I'm not wholly behind the demands of these people in terms of their demand on price caps on fuel. It's not a solution. I mean, price caps have never been a solution, but that's what's being demanded. At the same time, the prices keep going up. There's nothing really individual national governments can do about this. Right. I think they should scrap the carbon tax, obviously, but even that is on an EU level, that would have to be done. Individual countries actually can't really act with that. And even with things like lowering VAT, which some countries have done, Spain, Poland have their VAT, even that is technically against EU rules because these things have to be standardized to a certain level, to avoid different issues. So even that is only temporary. There's emergency measures, they're going to reverse them. So even though all of these measures governments brought in was on the basis that, okay, this will resolve in a month's time, that's kind of what markets priced in as well. It's looking like
are they even responsible for this then? So is this just one of these things where there just is no solution, people are mad and the government is just stuck? I mean, I suppose you could screw around with environmental and regulatory stuff, but that would probably take time, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I saw a poll, I mean, most people blame the government. I mean, of course, it's not complicated. I mean, people see prices of things going up and, you gotta be mad at someone, they're really mad at the government. And I mean, yeah, excise taxes are high, fuel taxes are very high compared to the US. It's typically about 50% in most of Europe. So I think people see that and see, I'm paying X amount for petrol, diesel, half of it is going to the government. Especially in Ireland, it doesn't really translate to services. We have a pretty strong economy, but one thing we lack is infrastructure, and money is very poorly misspent. So especially there, I think that's one of the main things driving it is, Irish people don't have a problem paying taxes, but there's this strong sense of nothing is really improving for ordinary workers. So yeah, it's just going to, it shows we're entering a period of political chaos, because if this drags for weeks, I really don't see how they're going to resolve it, because the government can't do price caps. I mean, it's just it's not going to happen.
Didn't work for Nixon. It's not going to work for anybody
Didn't
else.
work for Venezuela. You probably have to go back to the U.S. in the Second World War to find something that's close to it working.
Right. Yeah, the Roman Empire tried it and it didn't work.
Unless you want to go into a fully mobilized war economy.
Don't give them ideas. I mean, you kind of wonder sometimes whether they're just going to come up with something, because it just seems like the current economic system, and you even see this with inflation in the U.S., which is not all that bad, all things considered, but that's the biggest thing that voters are mad at Trump about. If you look at the polls, it's always cost of living, it's always inflation. but it's almost like whoever's in charge is just going to get the same thing.
Yeah.
It's an insolvable problem at this point.
Yeah.
And in Europe, in many ways, it's worse. So you're basically always guaranteed to get this sort of inchoate populism where everybody's furious at the government, but there's not actually a solution.
Yeah.
So, of course, the question is, how do we cynically take advantage of it? Because somebody's going to.
Yeah, well, this is what I was saying to you before we started. Maybe we should just embrace the chaos, just chaos max, because the worse things get, the more people are going to blame the government, regardless of what's happening. But that's why
President Trump, if you can hear me, bomb them all. Bomb them all.
This is why it was so dumb as well for like Farage. I think Vox did this to an extent to, at the very outset, come out in support of the bombings in Iran.
Oh, it was terrible.
It's like, because they have to own it for the next 2 years now.
For the economic thing. And Vance just came back today saying no deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is going to go on to some extent for at least a few more weeks. I mean, supposedly the Navy's in the Strait of Hormuz demining or whatever, but like, come on, they just need to hit one thing and everybody's going to go nuts again.
Yeah, people were way too optimistic of like, the capitalists will just push the tankers through no matter what. If once it's
capital is a coward.
Once it's safe enough. And now you have tankers saying that, now just because they've realized Iran has this power, they're unwilling to traverse it. And, like you said, they can't even find all of the mines. So we don't know how long this is going to drag. And it seems like the markets haven't priced in how serious this is looking.
No, it's going to get a lot worse. We're in Rome, so of course the church bells are going nuts. Maybe the war's over. Maybe this is what it's about.
Yeah.
Or either that or it's just like 2 o'clock or something. But I mean, one of the interesting things, of course, is like America's cynically benefiting from it. And I think to some extent this was probably part of the plan, if not the whole plan, because now the U.S. is exporting all this oil to everybody.
Yeah.
And all the ships are coming over here, which from an American perspective, you'd be like, okay, pretty cool. But from a European perspective, it's like, once again, the United States of America stabbing Europe in the back. Like, it is dangerous to be America's enemy. It is fatal to be America's friend, as Kissinger said, because it's the Europeans who are just getting hosed by this. And you didn't even have any part in it.
Yeah. It's a convergence of things as well, because if you think of it from like the perspective of a German voter, the Greens and Angela Merkel shut their nuclear power plants down, which is, I mean, to this day, I think it's just one of the most insane political decisions ever.
To Trump's credit, he was the one telling him not to do that, and they laughed at him.
Yeah. And then, they've totally sanctioned Russia, so they don't have that option. And it's like, now this is happening with Iran. It's like, and then at the same time, you've had the EU Green Deals, all of the environmental legislation that's been brought in. It's like the convergence of all those things together. Yeah, for the average, middle-class voter that's watched their heating bills increase and price at the pump increase, I mean, see all those things converge. Yeah, that is ripe for a populist movement. And you've seen it across Europe. I mean, AfD is the most popular party in Germany right now. It's Reform in the UK. But I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 years. This is definitely one of those black swan events that can really flip things. I even see it in Ireland. Like, I think there's a huge demographic that aren't ever going to support the government parties now over this. And that's something that's happened in a week that you could not have predicted. You could not have seen coming a month ago. And I mean, that will potentially revolutionize politics for a generation. We're really only at the beginning of this. Like, the actual fuel shortages haven't really kicked in, with how long the tankers take to travel and so on. So, I mean, it's interesting times.
Where are the Irish nationalists going? Because it seems like Ireland is one of the great exceptions as far as you don't have, I mean, you can criticize the existing nationalist parties as not going far enough, but you don't really have a kind of nationalist party that has a presence in government or fighting for control in government the same way you do in France and Germany and even Britain to some extent now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, part of it is just that there was a basic nationalism that was kind of taken for granted in the politics until pretty recently. I mean, I even remember when I first got into politics, if you went to the two main political parties in the country, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, they both described themselves as nationalist parties on their website. This was just the background to Irish politics. So, very quickly, the sort of establishment centre moved way to the left. And this is a negative and a positive of Irish politics in some regard, that there hasn't really been ideological politics. It's been much more divided on kind of clannish lines. It's a kind of clientelism. There's a kind of maybe divergence between small business owners and farmers and like NGO interests and this kind of thing. But for the most part, it's a kind of non-ideological non-ideological politics where people tend to vote more for an individual personality, what someone does for their area, their history with the party. For a long time, people voted along Civil War lines.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which county went? Yeah.
What side of the Civil War your family was on. And that's still a thing you hear even with older voters, which is kind of based in some regards. To be that clannish,
kind of how it should be.
Or to just decide politics based on like kind of like the chieftain of your area. Like,
I mean, that's true identity politics.
Who's getting resources for your area. Yeah, it's true identity politics. But then, of course,
it doesn't work when you have 1 million Pakistanis running in too.
Yeah, and then when your kind of central idea-shaping institutions, elite-shaping institutions move massively to the left, and the country completely transforms, it's very hard to get voters out of those patterns.
Is anything emerging the same way Restore emerged in Britain?
Well, like the National Party has grown a lot in the last couple of years, especially with a younger kind of vanguardist leadership. I mean, I've gone out and campaigned with them, and you see this, like, you'll talk to older voters and they'll agree with you on everything. But yeah, too many foreigners, struggling with all of the environmental legislation, hate the government parties. And, then they're voting for some, like, independent guy that's been around for a couple of decades because of some favor he did.
Yeah, right.
It's not, like, ideologically going to change anything. So it tends less to translate into some populist figure or movement like a Farage or a Trump. There's again the kind of clannishness, every man a chief. There's a lot of smatterings of different right-wing parties that have attempted something, but there really hasn't been. I think part of it is probably because of how cohesive the media system is, that they haven't allowed a figure like a Farage type figure to be created.
Yeah, they're never going to make that mistake again. I mean, whatever people think about him now, I think one of the interesting things about Trump in 2015, 2016 was it was the deliberate strategy of the Hillary Clinton campaign to put him on TV because that was the candidate they wanted to oppose. And the media put him, they used to run his speeches that were like an hour long, uncut. Because they thought this is how we destroy them. And it's like, boy, that didn't work. Yeah. They're never making that mistake again. And we'll never get the free internet that we had back in 2014 again.
Yeah. Yeah, they assumed everyone will think he's as awful as we do if we just put it out there.
Surprise.
I mean, you even noticed that with dissident figures as well. Like, you used to get pretty, they weren't puff pieces or anything, but, you get pieces on Jared Taylor or whatnot that would actually let him speak. I can't remember the last time I saw one of those.
No, it's gone way down. I mean, sometimes you still get people where it's kind of a traditional failure of people in our movement where they think like, well, I can use the media, right? Like, I'm going to let them come in and do a piece on me, and I'm going to use the media for my ends. And of course, it ends up being a hit piece, but there are hit pieces and there are hit pieces, right? And sometimes it actually does kind of work out. If you get a certain amount of exposure and they actually quote you in full, sometimes it works. And the other thing people get is that, I mean, I would never sit down for one of those, but maybe there are other people who are better at dealing with media than I am. And sometimes people just know what they're getting going in. Like, when the media is reporting on them, they just go, oh, this is a hit piece, but I've never heard of this guy before. I'm going to look him up and message him and this kind of thing. We get that at Amran all the time. Do you find that too? I mean, where like they come after you and then it's meant to hurt you, but it actually ends up helping you.
Yeah, I've always been surprised how little effect it seems to have. I mean, I've been profiled in like the big newspapers, like the Irish Times, the Irish Independent. A guy did interview me before for a documentary series he was doing for the radio on the far right. But I never really, I wouldn't know I was in these features unless I got the email from the journalist requesting comment or something. It really has little, I think it just shows the split there is in terms of old people in Ireland read newspapers and watch TV. And it's really just like a split binary of like internet users and television watchers. Right. I guess you notice that everywhere too.
Totally different world. I mean, this goes to the heart of what's going on with the right now because, I mean, let's look at President Trump. A lot of people say with some, I think, fairness that he basically bases his policies on what he sees on Fox News every night. And so if you can get a certain host in front of his face, I mean, he might go to war based on that. Yeah. But on the other hand, you look at anybody under 30, I mean, nobody's watching this. Yeah. I mean, someone like Mark Levin, it's not so much that he's even a hated figure, but like, who's that? I mean, just a totally irrelevant thing unless they hear like a streamer condemn him. All of these people are getting their news entirely from the internet, and all of the boomers are getting their news entirely from the TV. And at a certain point, it's like, is there even an American right anymore? Or is there a right in any of these countries? Because they're basing their priors on totally different things.
Yeah. You see with some of the Truth Socials he was putting out at the peak of the war, like it sounded like 2003, like kind of counter jihad slop.
Yeah, right.
It's like wow, in his mind it's still 2003, but then it's like, yeah, well, if he's watching Fox News,
it is still 2000.
Yeah, it's never stopped being 2003.
Yeah.
If all you talk to is Mark Levin and you're watching Fox
Right.
News, it's like, yeah, it is frozen in time for them. But it's
and
like
a lot of people vote who still think it's 2003. I mean, that's the problem.
But yeah, he obviously has no sense of how not resonant that is with people now. I saw him do the UFC walkout the other day, and it's like people are comparing it to when he did it in 2024, and it's like
different reception.
Oh yeah, it's totally. You got a standing ovation in 24, and now it's noticeably muted. But yeah, I think, I don't know, it's almost like he didn't have a sense of that kind of, it was like a broader coalition in 2024. I mean, it seems crazy in hindsight that you had a lot of the Joe Rogan and even like sort of left-wing types that thought, Biden has been supporting the Gaza genocide and maybe Trump will figure out a peace deal there. But I mean, he really did need that broader coalition of anti-war voices and libertarians and so on.
Yeah.
It seems like that's totally fractured now. Yeah. I wonder, will anyone on the right ever really get that back again? In terms of, it's hard to say. I don't think Vance is ever going to inspire people in that way.
I did see Rubio. No, definitely not Rubio. There does seem to be, I wouldn't be surprised if the leaks are coming from Vance. We're saying like, oh, he was the strongest anti-war voice and all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay. I mean, you can imagine somebody in the Vance camp sort of saying that to set up his credibility for next time. Yeah,
but now he was sent over for these negotiations, right?
Yeah, right.
And Rubio was front seat at the UFC event. So I don't know, was that a conscious thing? Like Vance
takes the fall, Rubio gets up at the air, right? And I think Rubio would be willing to take that. I mean, Vance has even floated the idea that he won't even run because of family issues or something like that.
Yeah. No, it's not looking.
Maybe that's smart. Let somebody else go, and then you come back 4 years later.
Yeah, because he kind of had washed his hands of it to an extent, the Iran war. But now, if these negotiations break down and the war resumes, I mean, at that point, he's as guilty as anyone, right? Yeah, he was leading it.
I mean, I guess the question then becomes, one, is there an American-European relationship out of this? Because at this point, the geostrategic interests are like totally divided. Mm-hmm. Although, I don't know, and I'm not trying to I am very sympathetic to the anti-American argument from a European perspective, but your leaders just friggin' hate you. And at a certain point, it's not our fault, man. We're not the ones doing this shit. And Trump defunded all the NGOs that were pushing all this stuff. What are you going to do about Ursula von der Leyen or whatever? And the other question is, where does the American right go after this? Because, one of the things I've always said is sometimes you just lose. There seems to be this assumption that the pendulum always swings back. And it's but it doesn't though. The pendulum never swung back after 1932, for example, with FDR. Mm-hmm. He changed the country forever. Yeah. And the next time the Republicans got in, all those programs that he put through, they just consolidated it, and that was it. If you thought that the New Deal was going to scare people into repealing it someday, you were just wrong. And I think we're in a situation now where they get back in again. They're not even going to fake it with immigration control. They're just going to open the borders, give them all citizenship, and then at a certain point, that's the ballgame.
Yeah, who's the guy right now? Is Mike Lawler, who's proposing what's basically a mass amnesty bill.
Yep, up in New York.
Says it's bipartisan support. Even if that doesn't go through, I don't know, I don't want to speak with any expertise on U.S. politics, but it's hard to see if they don't do the mass deportations in this term, are we going to get 4 years of Democrats and then in 2032 when the country is percent white that they're going to deport 20 million people? It really seemed like this was the last chance.
Right.
Which is why it's especially kind of tragic to watch from the outside that all the political capital seems to be being
right. That's the big thing. Yeah. If you actually look at the numbers on deportation, it actually looks a lot better, I think, than people would have expected 6 months ago. There's a lot of good stuff happening, but to a certain extent, who cares? Because Iran kind of eats everything else.
Yeah.
And this, I guess, is the big problem, because this is the fundamental question. At some level, you're given the choice, and you can say, well, these are our principles and everything else. Well, politics is about coalition. You're given a guy, and usually the guy is pretty good on a couple things, and he sucks on a couple others. Mm-hmm. And it's do you support this guy? Because if you support him on the things that you want, if he goes down on the things that you don't like, nobody's going to say, oh, but it's okay, you disagreed with him on this. You're gonna eat the whole meal, so to speak. And that seems to be the position the American right is in with Trump.
Yeah.
Because frankly, on domestic policy, I'm just they're is this what you expected? I'm yeah, pretty much. But then when you look at foreign policy, it's like, crap, because here we go,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I thought his presidency this time got off to a pretty promising start in terms of, some of the executive orders on civil rights and so on. But yeah, I mean, it was a case where the Israel foreign policy thing seems to have become basically a bipartisan thing. I mean, you saw what happened with, foreign policy with Biden and the Israel war. So I think a lot of left-wingers felt that way as well, where it's like, well, we've had the Democrats in power for 2 years and we got Gaza genocide and X number of billions to these countries and so on. So that argument stopped having any resonance. But I mean, the difference is now, that time Trump was promising 20 million deportations. I don't know how many people are going to take promises like that seriously in the future. Like, do you just get to a certain point where the non-voters become non-voters again?
Right.
Like, you even have that in the UK. Like, there's actually a lot of patriotic people in the UK that want mass deportations, and they've just been categorized as non-voters for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah, right.
It's like, well, okay, there's no party that supports this. I'm just going to check out of politics.
Right.
And then Brexit the Vote Leave campaign was able to focus on getting people out.
And then immigration went up immediately afterward.
Turns out there's millions of them. But again, it's like Brexit was like a direct, vote for fewer immigrants. Now it's back to, Conservative Party importing 5 million migrants during Boris Johnson's reign. It's like those people go back to being non-voters. It's just like that thing you were saying. It's like right-wingers assume, it gets bad, it gets to a certain point, boom, breaking point, everyone becomes a radical. It's like actually a lot of times what happens is it gets bad and people become non-voters again. They just check out, right? And they wait for the next referendum, if that'll ever come in their lifetime, that they can maybe show some token resistance. But yeah, I mean, it's a bleak position the US is in right now, especially the US right. But I think the American-European relationship, I think, I guess I'm sort of a centrist on this. Like, I do think the blaming the US for European leftism is overly reductive. It goes too far. I mean, there's obviously has been elements of that in the past. You mentioned USAID and Congress for Cultural Freedom. Obviously, the US has encouraged a more liberal left in Europe. But yeah, I mean, now, you have Vance and Rubio coming to Europe telling European leaders to stop replacing their population and, pressuring Germany not to ban AfD and pressuring for free speech. I think it's hard to make that excuse at this point. But it is unfortunate that at a time where it seemed like the US right was aligning more with the kind of identitarian European right, that now this foreign policy split has been created. Yeah. And, the AfD has come out in response to this and said they want US troops out of Germany, which is smart. Pretty significant as well. And they've also, I think, tabled a proposal to say Germany should become an armed power. So again, it's like, to some degree, it's like maybe it's good Trump is just chaos maxing if it's going to
that's kind of the argument. Yeah, because that's one of the things. And you almost wonder, because he's more or less said that. He's like, the Europeans need to build up the military and everything else. And it's like, well, maybe if you just piss them off enough, like they'll do it, which seems to be the strategy. I mean, Macron has been talking about strategic autonomy for Europe for the longest time, but then nothing ever happens. They've been talking about a European army for the longest time. Nothing ever happens. But I mean, at some point, you figure it has to happen. I mean, if for no other reason than if by somehow, some way, Trump or Vance or Rubio or whoever stays in power, I mean, you can very easily imagine a scenario a few years from now where America just goes, nope, and leaves NATO, and that's that. Yeah.
It's kind of a two-pronged thing in terms of, like, does it help us or not? It's like, on the one hand, if you look at, when he's talking about we're going to seize Greenland and so on, it's like, on the one hand, it kind of undermines nationalists because it's the liberals that are in power, and now they're the ones going
the patriotic.
Out. And Starmer is coming out saying, making announcements.
Churchillian,
we will not. I will not send our boys to die in a foreign excursion. It's not for the British national interest, and it actually has helped their support to a degree.
Right.
And sometimes these outside forces are framed then as, well, these are the Trumpian vanguard. They're basically traitors. They're able to frame people that way, and it does work to an extent. And sometimes, look, there is priors where it's like, well, look, Farage has supported all this.
100%.
He would have done something that was against their national interest. But then on the other hand, it's that thing where it's like, well, this kind of sort of like Atlanticist sort of liberal project is kind of being fatally undermined, where, okay, these institutions we took for granted in terms of NATO and these agreements that were seen to be well beyond any individual government, now all that is up in the air. Now you do have to think of defense on a national level. Now you can't take things like NATO for granted. I mean, you can obviously see there is a space there in terms of national sovereignty re-entering the picture politically.
Right.
But again, it can go either way, because it's the person leading that argument for national sovereignty going to be Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer.
Hey guys, quick reminder before we continue. You can follow Identity Politics on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, and TikTok. And if you want to make sure you never miss an episode, sign up for our email list. If you believe in this work and you want to help us stay fully independent, you can support us directly on Ko-Fi. We offer bronze, silver, gold, and white membership tiers, or you can give a one-time contribution, whatever works for you. Every bit of support helps fund production, research, and our ability to speak freely without corporate or platform pressure. All the links are in the description below. Now back to the show. Yeah, the other thing too, of course, is that you can imagine a second life for all these institutions if you get Kamala Harris, who's probably going to run again, or Gavin Newsom, or whoever. You know, some center-left Democrat goes in, all the European leaders who are going, we need to be independent, they're all going to come crawling back. Right. And you can already see it, because that's basically what happened after George W. Bush, where you had these same sort of tensions. You remember, like, old Europe and new Europe and all this kind of stuff. And then Obama got in, and for God's sakes, he was giving speeches in Germany.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I sometimes listen to John Bolton just to get the complete opposite end of what is that side saying. But that's basically his take, is he's super concerned that Trump would blow up NATO and destroy these institutions. But he always says, but look, he's going to be gone soon, and it's basically going to go back to normal. Someone's just going to get in and repair these relationships. And you kind of think, yeah, why would that not happen? You know, if it's a Democrat, obviously it's going to happen. But even a Republican, I mean, it's the next Republican candidate going to blow up NATO for egotistical reasons? I don't think so. So I think these institutions probably will outlast this. But at the same time, you know, the Greenland situation especially, I think, showed up a lot of European governments of really being at the mercy of the US, which has obviously been true for decades, but it's like,
people don't like seeing
we've never put that out. You're not meant to spell it out. You're not meant to spell it out, exactly. So I do think there probably will be a move towards more militarization in Europe. But again, if there isn't that strong break from the US once Trump leaves, then it's going to take on this liberal character again. Which would be the worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. I guess, I mean, I can imagine somebody like Rubio coming in and basically being like, okay, we're going to try to repair it in a certain way. But then it just kind of goes back to the way things are, where America tells Europe what to do, but we just don't say it. And so everybody just sort of pretends. Mm-hmm. But of course, none of this really matters, of course, if the demographic situation is not reversed. I mean, in America, we'll see there are reasons to be hopeful. There are reasons to very much not be hopeful. In Europe, I don't know. I mean, the situation in Spain seems like the worst thing that's happened in a long time, because for a long time, it seems that the situation in Europe is like things are getting a little bit better everywhere. And like, yes, it's a race against time. Yes, the numbers are there. But one thing Americans don't get is, by and large, the European situation demographically is a lot better than the American situation in most countries. And as nationalist parties continue to gain ground, eventually there comes a point where you can get rid of these people. But then you see what Spain just did. And also, when you think of the reaction of ICE in the United States, remigration is now a mainstream policy. But I mean, Keith, let's be honest. If people can't handle like ICE in Minnesota, how are you going to do remigration? Right. Yeah. Yeah. I was making that point at the time. It was, who was the woman, George Floyd? What was it? Oh, right. Yeah. Right. People were Renee Good. Renee Good. Right, yeah. How could we forget? Yes, right. That tells you the thing. Like, if you're a liberal hero, you'll be remembered for 2 weeks. And then the other guy, Alex Prenti, or whatever his name was. But yeah, I mean, there were people on the right criticizing that, saying this is too far, we shouldn't be doing violence. And it's like, many of them were the same people saying, like, Trump hasn't gone far enough because he hasn't deported 10 million people. It's like, how did you think you were going to deport 10 million people? Right. And just like, you know, people are resistant, and you just like let them and still deport 10 million. It's like, what did you think it would involve? So that is kind of blackpilling. It's just like, we're serious about this or not. Even your own side can't really read between the lines of like, you're going to have to like drag people out of their homes, you know? But do you think European nationalists got the message too? Because I mean, look, there's a remigration summit coming up in Portugal. There's this has been the big thing. Martin Sellner's got the book now about it and everything else. And it's like, okay, Nationalist Party wins. I mean, if I had to bet where it would happen first, maybe Austria. That seems to be where the parties get like 40% now in the polls. Let's say they win. They form the government. We're in power.
now what? Because you're going to run into the same things where like every single judge is going to say that's not allowed.
Yeah.
Every single NGO is going to be out there resisting in the streets. At some point, somebody's going to fight a cop and they're going to do something back. What do you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would be huge for AFD to get in Germany, because obviously a lot of this is EU centric, and you know, if you have Germany especially, but if you have Germany and France, you have the EU basically. So that's massive. But I mean, yeah, it's easy to be blackpilled. At the same time, I mean, there are things happening now that I could never have called a few years ago, like the emergence of someone like Rupert Lowe in Britain. I wouldn't have
and he's handled Iran really well. Just shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's another case as well, where you know you have these Zoomer vanguards and all these parties now, and you can kind of tell Rupert Lowe's being led by his Zoomer vanguard.
Yes, thank God.
Because he would have said things 3-4 years ago that he does it now, and you can tell it's like the Zoomers. Like, you know,
he's got the Zoomer whisperer. Like
yeah, and it's pretty much paying off for him so far. But yeah, even with, you know, FPO in Austria, I mean, you look at the Zoomers in that party. I mean, like they wouldn't be out of place here. So there has been a real formation of a radical right. I think a lot of us, I was probably overly harsh on the idea of like an infiltration strategy like 8-10 years ago, but we just hadn't really seen the fruits of it. Obviously it takes time, but now it's like, you know, you just go to some of these conferences and I'm talking to guys and they're like writing the immigration policy for a party that's on 20% in their country. They're like working for a member of parliament that's going to be a minister in the next government. It's like it really has happened pretty fast when you think about where we were and, you know, the lack of resources and everything else we were using 8-10 years ago. But I think another thing that's positive is, you know, you saw it with the Trump 2 administration, like slashing US aid and aggressive use of executive orders. And even in some of the things, number one, that Restore are proposing, but even that Reform are proposing. In terms of Reform are proposing to just abolish the hate speech legislation, the Equality Act, leave the ECHR. So there has been right-wing populist movements in the past that were promising to fix immigration and, you know, all these big promises and deport all the illegals. But I do think there's a bit of a change now in terms of people are actually looking like, let's get to the root legislation. Like if it's the UK, like back to the Equality Act, back to the stuff Blair
Get rid
passed.
of that Supreme Court that they made. And
like back to the stuff Blair was passing in the 90s, planning for this is going to constrain governments in 30 years' time.
Right.
And now there's a much more, you know, you talk to boomers and it's like, you know, the idea of like, oh, we'll get rid of the anti-racism law. So you put the right name on it. It's like, well, I'm not a racist. I guess. But now it's
spell
like,
crafting, right? I mean,
but now it's like if someone like Lowe gets it, it's like, you know, you'll put the Zoomers in charge of that and they'll just like, you know, like Musk's Doge, the kind of people that staff that, like they will actually just wipe all the stuff out.
Right.
And I mean, you know, it is a case with 90% of this stuff that like it was approved by a parliament. One act of parliament can just basically abolish all of this stuff. And that's something we can kind of find common ground with like the more libertarian or kind of conservative types as well. Like, again, to use the example of the UK, you've seen these types like the David Starkeys, like the kind of boomer conservatives, that they would come behind a nationalist movement and maybe they don't support like, okay, they don't want it to be ethno-nationalist. They don't want everyone
there are certain words they don't want used. They want certain things soft-pedaled.
Yeah, but they'll support like wiping out every piece.
I mean, this is one of the things, and correct me if you think I'm wrong here, because this is pretty fundamental what I think. And if I'm wrong, I want to hear it. But one of the things that the left always says is that if you have like the hard right, if you have the nationalists, that if they come in, like the conservatives, the moderate conservatives will just like go along with it. And I actually think that's basically true. And think of the way people got behind Trump, who spent their career, Rubio for one. I mean, look, Trump called Ted Cruz's wife a dog. And now he like slavishly supports the guy. So like they'll go along with anything if they have people of strong will in the lead.
Well, I mean, you can say the number one trait of conservatives is cowardice, which is like
too cowardly to fight, too fat to run. That's the conservative.
But there's kind of an upside of that as well, which is like, well, exactly. They do hide the controversial beliefs, not for any really principled thing, but just because it's difficult.
Right.
And I mean, you can see even in narrow context, like what we consider moderate conservatives, they can be pretty cruel and extreme on some things. Like, you know, get like a boomer conservative talking about what he thinks should happen to Palestinians after October 7th.
Oh, yeah. I'll go absolutely genocidal. I'll go further. they are really good at knife fighting enemies within the own movement. So let's say boomer conservative, like let's say you've got some Nick Fuentes fans and they want to take over like a Republican Party committee somewhere. You will see Machiavellian intrigue and ruthlessness to take these kids out, but they never have it for the left. It's always against their own side. They are good knife fighters and they are ruthless, but they just have this, I think they really are like magically disarmed by certain words on the other side. And I think they fundamentally believe that the left is morally correct, but they just go too fast. And their job is to just kind of slow it down a little bit.
Yeah. I think some of it as well, they just, you know, the left thinks in like generational cycles.
Yeah, right.
And this is one of the problems with having a less intellectual movement to an extent is like, I remember Richard and DeAnna did a piece on this before. We broke down media habits. Like the left read,
conservatives watch TV. Yeah.
Well, one effect of that is like intellectuals can plan for decades ahead and then feed you the talking points that maybe you're going to lose this election and
the high time preference narrative has been turned against us now.
Right, yeah, but like maybe you lose a couple of elections, but you've seeded these new principles, these new talking points, and in 3 elections time, everyone is going to accept those principles, right? That's kind of the model left's operating on. The right, it's just like narrowly the enemy that's in front of me. How can I overcome them? You know, I'll accuse them of hypocrisy. I'll say that they're the real racists. It's just like whatever works.
Well, these days I'll accuse them randomly of being pedophiles.
Right. So yeah, there's literally just whatever works in the kind of given moral paradigm you're presented with, and there's not much thought beyond that. But yeah, again, the flip side of that is once you begin to attain power, once you make these things acceptable, that they'll be very happy to adopt the ethno-nationalist talking points to attack someone. You know, it's like when Trump started made it okay, it's like Somalis just like low IQ fraudsters. It's like, was there any principal conservative that was especially offended by that?
Yeah,
you know, it's
not
like,
a single one.
You can call Somalis low IQ.
I mean, even this is sort of the thing is that my friend Paul Kersey always says, you know, Trump's not the guy. Nobody thought Trump was the guy, but Trump's the one who's going to get us to the guy. Because you have to sort of like break through these things. And now people are now comfortable with the idea of, oh, why is this person in Congress? Well, you know, you can just denaturalize them, right? You can just kind of take it away. Like, oh, we can just strip these people of citizenship. And apparently they're doing that. I mean, it's still pretty small numbers. We're talking dozens, but dozens more than they've done in the past like century. And so now the ideas are there. And it's just a question of, or like judges, for example. The idea of a judge determining what is the law. I mean, that was sacrosanct. Now it's basically common sense to be like, yeah, we need to punish the judges too when they let a guy loose who commits a murder. You got Elon Musk saying stuff like that.
Right.
Now, the problem is that, the Overton window has shifted and people are discussing these things, but it's just mixed in with all this nonsense that it almost like discredits the good ideas. I think the reason so many people on the right, it's almost like, I mean, I'm never going to do this, but I know people who have, they almost like switch sides because they're just like, these people are so stupid, I can't deal with it anymore. Yeah. And they go off. And I think it's a real problem.
Yeah, you know, I think it's nice something I started noticing recently that obviously you want your movement to grow as much as possible, reach as many people, as many eyeballs as possible, but there actually is a point at which the bad drives out the good.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, I could try and argue and move the movement a certain way, but it's like it's me versus 100 other commenters. Most people just kind of dip out, and I think everyone has noticed that to a certain extent. And that's maybe, you know, it's been a positive thing, obviously, that censorship has lessened, these ideas have opened up. But it's like the left, you saw the graph that came out before where they model left and right wing opinions, and the left is this tight cluster.
One left, many rights.
Right. Yeah. The right is this huge thing. But yeah, it's like now when you have politics as infotainment and it's algorithm generated, you have this huge cluster of beliefs. And I mean, people basically go for the most entertaining beliefs. Right. And it's just a grab bag of kind of anti-establishment stuff, vaccines or, you know, the moon landing is fake or whatever else. But yeah, at a certain point, it's like, you know, what is the appeal of your own ideology then? It's the most pure, it's the most correct. Well, okay, but like people aren't, you know, their algorithm on X or TikTok isn't driven by what's the most correct, right? And most people are basically in politics as a form of entertainment, especially I think Gen Z now. I mean, you see people that are super into politics in Gen Z, and they've probably never read a book in their life. It's like entirely short videos.
I mean, I hate to say it because I sound so old when I say it. Like,
I know, but I mean, you can even witness the change in the past 3-4 years. But I mean, it's a problem. But I think it does. You know, we were talking about this at the conference. That's when institutions do become more important, because, like, a few years ago, you basically had like the dedicated lifers, and they were the kind of nationalist content creators, influencers, thinkers. But now it's like those people and, you know, 1,000 others that are just, you know, promoting and generating slop. And it's like, so what is going to be the incentive for who rises to the top? Because right now it's basically who can be the most popular content creator, which is who's the most charismatic. Well, you know, you get a charismatic content creator, they're probably not going to have the best skills for political leadership or organization, and can tend to be pretty self-destructive people. So, yeah, I mean, it's never been easier to get a big following, go viral, post in whatever anti-establishment, you know, even anti-immigration kind of content online. But, you know, if that's just disorganized content that people consume, you know, what's that really going to lead to? And also, it's not really sticky in terms of these influencers. One could replace another. You know, people don't feel, because they're not transmitting any you know, solid ideas or ideology. It's basically just feeding people back what they want, you know, videos, news, whatever else.
It can change in 6 months and people won't even notice, because fundamentally it's a personality war. I mean, it's sort of like we're joking about, like, oh, we're going to do stuff on like looks maxing or something like that. But the funny thing about that is, you know, a lot of people are comparing all these sorts of things to professional wrestling for Zoomers. Like, this is the same thing, these sort of fake showdowns. Well, what is it, like the streamer culture in a lot of ways? And like, oh, Hassan is feuding with Destiny. It's like, who gives a shit? Like, what do these guys even have to say? But it's a real problem, because too, and this was something Americans would say about the European scene, you know, 10, 15 years ago, is say like, well, these guys don't have free speech, but in a way it's kind of helped them, because you have to think before you do something. You can't just go out there and say whatever crazy shit. You got to like figure out, okay, this is what we're dealing with. We got to craft our ideas a certain way. We got to build this kind of movement and everything else. And even on the American right, when you're dealing with censorship, it's like, okay, I have to make my case a certain intellectual way. I can't just be like, oh, black people are stupid, you know. Now you actually suffer if you prepare your case carefully. It's actually much better to just be like, they're stupid and also they're demons, and then just roll with it, because that's where you're going to get the most clicks. And how you overcome that is a very difficult question. I'm not sure there is a correct answer other than just be content that you're going to reach the audience you want to reach.
Yeah, it is. It's a real conundrum. Yeah, I mean, there's people that I really respect that have audiences in nationalism, but it's like, if they were coming up now, would they have got that audience in the sea of
grandfathered in, basically,
in the sea of, you know, short videos and AI slop and gossip and whatever else?
Jared would get eaten alive. Eaten alive, people.
He could be a, you know, 100 follower reply guy on Twitter. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
With a Substack, with a Substack that 5 people read. So, but that is a problem. Yeah, I think the only but then it's like, well, what advantage do we have that the sloppers don't? And obviously one is that, well, when you have a coherent ideology, you have numbers, you can band together. And then that's where, institutions are important. That, well, okay, we can, you know, maybe we won't compete an individual in having the biggest slop account, but we can create media institutions that will be more respected, more trusted. And maybe the mass of people will still go to slop aggregator accounts on Twitter for the news, but there will be people that will be looking for serious coverage. There's always a space for that. Conservatives have, you know, done an okay job in terms of making, you know, serious, at least serious looking media setups and so on. But that's when you need institutions of, okay, well, we're going to have to be willing to fund people that are the serious thinkers. We're going to have to be able to support people that do have serious talent for this stuff. And that's the advantage they'll have over the sloppers, is they're not chasing the 2-week X payout.
Right. You can
they're salaried in. Yeah. They can actually build something. They can establish a reputation. And, you know, we're not operating on the 2-week timeline of what's Nikita.
And you're not just relying on novelty. I mean, this is one of the other things is you begin to understand why, like, musicians resent the fans who tell them to play their old songs over and over again. And so they're like, oh, I always want to play something new. You see this, I think, with a lot of people online where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to change my mind about something really important, like a year from now. And you get the feeling they're doing it just because they're kind of bored. Yeah. But there's also like an economic incentive, because if you just keep saying the same thing over and over, people will tune out. But if you're like, actually, supporting mass immigration is the right-wing position, and here's why. People, oh, this is something novel. I'll pay attention. I'll send them money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, even talking about the fuel protests, I mean, it's not especially beneficial for my Twitter payout or my engagement to say, this is a pretty complicated, nuanced question.
People love that on X.
Yeah. And oil is a globally priced commodity, and government.
If you see the chart here,
the government is pretty constrained in what it can cut because of EU regulations. So they've done this on this 1 month timeline, which may not look like a big cut, but there is a VAT rebate that hauliers can avail of. And if we were to do price caps, that would actually hurt everyone more, because collectively we would have to subsidize these gas stations, and it would be a very slow process to communicate that to the market. So we'd have shutdowns and supply chain issues. It's like the guy who's posting the video saying, "Oh my God, holy shit, Ireland is in civil war." Like, I'm not going to beat that guy. So yeah, I mean, it's the incentive is there for everyone now. But the hope would be that, well, okay, the mass of people are going to go for the slop, but at a certain point, I think the elite people, the people that are capable, that are high IQ, I think at a certain point they do kind of get burned out by that and say, okay, well, what are we going to do to fix this? And then that's when they look for something more serious. And
something will come out of this current market. Yeah. People will react.
So the sloppers will have the numbers, but the kind of elite human capital, which is
we're Europeans. When have numbers ever mattered?
Yeah. So the elite human capital, which is a term we can borrow from some awful people that coined it, but I think it actually is a good way to think about it. That if you get the elite human capital, other things will follow. Those are the people you should be chasing.
One of the things about elite human capital, this whole concept of it, is when Hai came up with it, he was saying, oh, well, he was trying to apply to like transgenders and liberals and everything else. And it's like, but here's the thing. Like, I understand the argument. I'm not like entirely unsympathetic to it.
Mm-hmm.
You deal with like normie conservatives or whatever. You're just like, oh, they're so easily misled and everything else. But the issue is not that expertise as such is bad.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that the people who are claiming to be experts are just wrong about fundamental things. I had this thing a long time ago where like the liberals are usually right about the specifics. So like a right-winger will say something about, I don't know, Medicare, some welfare program. I'll make some charge. The charge is probably wrong. The liberal will be like, no, the law says this. The liberals right on the specifics. But when it comes to the larger point, this program is actually going to make poverty worse. Mass immigration actually leads to more crime and more welfare use and makes the country worse, all these sorts of things. The right-wingers, even the stupid right-wingers, even the right-wingers who don't read, seem to have a better understanding of the fundamentals of politics and where things are going. Even the really dumb conspiracy theory, if you're like, oh, everyone's a satanic pedophile who worships Moloch. Okay, maybe that's not literally true, but the idea of, hey, there's this elite that governs you and they don't really have your best interests at heart, that's actually a pretty defensible take, that these people don't care about you. And I think what really has driven this is not just the algorithm, it's not just Elon Musk, it's not just Trump, it's that the liberal institutions, especially in trying to oppose Trump and especially in how they handled COVID, forfeited their own credibility. I mean, who can forget when the medical journals went from you need to stay indoors to you need to go out and protest racial justice because that's actually more important than worrying about disease transmission. I mean, that alone, they're never going to come back from. And I think that there is something to be said in terms of how you fight the sloppyism, because the one thing that none of these accounts do, there's plenty of AI, there's plenty of commentary, there's plenty of rants, but there's no original reporting. And that is the biggest thing that's missing, because takes are cheap. But original reporting, here's something that hasn't been done before, here's something you didn't know about, that's important. I mean, isn't that something that I saw you guys did that with the NSV protest a few weeks ago. I mean, that was incredible footage.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all this interesting stuff happening around Europe right now. I mean, we're here right now, there's a conference, but at the same time, there's a re-immigration conference in Madrid, in Paris, there's the Iliade conference, which has like 1,000 people. So there's all this interesting stuff happening, but of course, the interesting stuff doesn't really get covered unless it's mainstream media coming with a camera to try and find the most extreme looking guy and point a camera at him and say it was violent. So yeah, we've started with Europa Media sending crews to cover this stuff on the ground, to give it fair presentation, to show us the organizers have in mind. We went to the City West protest where a asylum seeker raped an underage girl. and there was this huge protest outside there. Well, the only other one that was there to cover it was Ezra Levant, right?
Right.
None of the mainstream media came out because they're not really tapped into these networks to realize this is going to be a huge thing, right? There's huge anger about this. I think a couple of thousand people came out. Ezra Levant is on the first plane, and it's like, you get frustrated. Well, why is Ezra Levant shaping the narrative on this? It's like, well, he flew out there. He has a camera crew. He's got the 4K video up a few minutes after it happens. It's like, so we should be out competing them in that. We need to have our own coverage of these on the ground events, of these parties, presenting these the best way we can. I mean, we have the resources to do this now. We have the talent to send crews around and cover this stuff. And I think also, talking about slop, I mean, it's getting more and more difficult to identify what's real. I mean, I think everyone at some point has fallen for posting a story that was fake or AI or some slop account just invented it. And there's all these debates about the algorithm and how to fix it and put the correct stories in people's feeds. So we've also been building an aggregator on Europa.com, which eventually we plan to have enough writers to just have a 24-hour feed of news and info, and it'll be reliable source stuff, archival links of mainstream media stuff, our own stuff. But I think there's sort of a demand for that of people when it's just this wave of slop and algorithmic content that you just have a feed and you choose based on headlines, and that will be presented alongside nationalist opinion, essays, videos, and so on.
Well, I think that what's ultimately going to happen is people are just going to have to trust certain brands or certain personalities. I mean, the goal eventually is that, like, Europa becomes what the New York Times used to be. How do I know this isn't a fake story? Because Europa did it and they don't bullshit you. And ultimately, everybody's going to have to do this. But it's going to have to be done by giving people actual information that they haven't seen before and doing actual reporting of stories that they haven't found out from anybody else. It's just not going to come from pure commentary.
Right.
I think the commentary is secondary, but right now commentary is 99% of what's going on.
Yeah, I had this conversation with a friend recently. He was predicting that with all of the slop and fake news that's out there, at a certain point people are going to get so burned out by it that they're just going to go back to mainstream media. I said, no, I don't see that happening. I think once mainstream media loses people, they don't go back. The things you mentioned earlier, once you see that, you can't unsee it, So I said, I think what will happen is people will just pick a favorite influencer and just trust everything they tell them. Because when you're in that environment where all this fake stuff is coming at you left and right, the average person, doesn't have a way to scan things through an
and it's too much to expect them to do it.
Right. So what's the most natural thing? The most natural thing is like, well, I like that guy. He has my interest. I'll just trust.
I like the cut of his jib, right?
So yeah, I think it is important that we have something centralized where, okay, we don't have a crew of 20 people to write stories on everything that's happening across the Western world, but it's an aggregator. If it's up on the site, you can know this is not slop. This is not a fake story. This is a legit source. We've read it. We've applied our headline to it. That there can just be one central thing, that this is a trustworthy node, which so few people have now as far as individual media organizations.
Yeah, well, that sounds really exciting. I think it's one of the fundamental things of infrastructure that the movement's been lacking for a long time, and you're definitely the guy to build it.
All right, I appreciate it, man. Great really talking to you, yeah.
All right, guys, that's it for today's episode of Identity Politics. If you found this valuable and you want to see more of this kind of work, here's how you can help. First, follow the show and share it with people who need to hear it. We're on Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, X, TikTok, and you can also grab the RSS feed. Sharing it is the fastest way for us to grow. Second, sign up for our email list so we can always stay in direct contact no matter what the platforms decide. And most importantly, if you believe in our mission and want to keep it going, please consider supporting us on Ko-Fi. You can donate once or subscribe at the bronze, silver, gold, or white level. Every contribution, big or small, helps keep Identity Politics independent and alive. All the links are in the description below. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. We'll see you next time.